Chapter 1. The mark of blood. The rain had turned the cobblestones to mirrors, reflecting the gaslights of the old city in fractured gold. Elena Corvus walked quickly, her coat pulled tight against the autumn cold, her daughter's small hand clutched in hers. 6-year-old Mira hummed softly, oblivious to the way her mother's pulse hammered beneath her ribs. They shouldn't have stayed so late at the hospital. Elena knew better. The old quarter emptied after dark for a reason. Stories passed down through generations, warnings wrapped in folklore that the modern world had half forgotten. But Mira's fever had spiked, and the night clinic was the only place open. Now, as they hurried through streets that seemed to narrow with each turn, Elena felt the weight of her mistake. The alley appeared suddenly on their left, a gash of deeper shadow between two crumbling buildings. Elena pulled Mira closer, quickening her pace. But the child stumbled, her shoe catching on the uneven stones. "Mama, wait," the voice came from the darkness ahead, smooth as silk over steel. "Lost. Are we?" 3 figures stepped into the light. Men, Elena thought at first, though something in the way they moved made her skin prickle. Too fluid, too still. The one who'd spoken wore a long coat that seemed to drink the shadows, his face, pale as bone beneath dark hair. "We're just passing through," Elena said, hating the tremor in her voice. She'd survived worse than street thugs. She'd survived Marcus, survived the scandal, survived being cast out with nothing but her daughter and the clothes on their backs. She could survive this. The man smiled, and Elena's breath caught. His teeth were wrong to sharp to white, the canines slightly too long. "Passing through House Valentius territory without tribute? That's bold for cattle. Cattle." The word struck her like a physical blow. Old stories flooded back, whispers her grandmother used to share on winter nights. The great houses, the blood courts, the laws that governed the night while humans slept, ignorant and safe. "Please," Elena whispered. "My daughter, Mama, look." Mira's voice cut through the tension, bright with childish curiosity. She was pointing past the 3 figures, her small finger aimed at something deeper in the shadows. A 4th man stood there, though Elena hadn't seen him approach. He was taller than the others, his presence somehow denser, more real. Dark hair fell past his collar, framing a face that might have been carved from marble, beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. His eyes caught the gaslight, reflecting it back in shades of amber and gold. "Sir," Mira said, her voice carrying no fear, "my mom's tattoo matches yours." The world seemed to stop. The 3 men froze, their earlier predatory grace vanishing into rigid stillness. The tall stranger's eyes snapped to Elena's wrist, where her sleeve had ridden up, exposing the delicate mark. She'd been born with a crescent moon pierced by a thorned rose, rendered in ink so dark it seemed black in some lights, crimson in others. She'd always thought it a birthmark, something in her bloodline. Her grandmother had borne the same symbol. But as she watched the stranger's expression shift from cold disinterest to something sharp and dangerous, Elena realized she'd been wrong. "Impossible." One of the 3 men breathed. The tall stranger moved. Then, crossing the distance between them in a blur of motion that made Elena's mind rebel. One moment he stood 10 paces away. The next, his hand wrapped around her wrist, lifting it to the light. His touch was cool, firm, careful. Despite the violence in his speed, up close, Elena could see his mark clearly. It adorned his left hand, identical to hers in every detail save one. His was silver, raised like a scar, pulsing faintly with light that seemed to come from beneath his skin. "The house mark," he said, his voice low and rough, as though speaking cost him something. "Where did you get this?" "I was born with it," Elena managed. "My grandmother had one too." His eyes lifted to hers, and Elena felt the full weight of his attention like a physical thing. Ancient, she thought wildly. This creature was ancient, had walked the earth for centuries while empires rose and fell. "Your name," he commanded. "Elena." "Elena Corvus." Something flickered across his face. Recognition? Grief? It vanished too quickly to name. He released her wrist and stepped back, his attention shifting to the 3 men who still stood frozen. Their expressions caught between shock and calculation. "Leave," he said simply. "But Lord Ashenfell." "The laws of encounter," I said. "Leave." The command carried weight that Elena felt in her bones, some quality of power that made the air itself seem to thicken. The 3 men vanished into the shadows as though they'd never been, their retreat silent and absolute. Lord Ashenfell. The name, whispered through Elena's memory, half remembered from her grandmother's stories. The first of House Ashenfell. The vampire king who'd ruled the night for 1,000 years. He turned back to her, and Mira pressed closer to Elena's side, her earlier boldness fading. "You need to come with me," he said. "No," Elena said automatically. "We're going home. There is no home for you now. They've seen your mark. They know what you are, what you might be." His jaw tightened. "House Valentius won't stop hunting you. And they're not the only ones who'll want to claim you." "Claim me?" Fear sharpened Elena's voice. "I don't understand any of this. I don't even know what this mark means." "It means," Lord Ashenfell said quietly, "that you carry blood that hasn't walked this earth into 100 years. Blood that every house thought extinct." He met her eyes again, and Elena saw something ancient and tired in his gaze. "It means you're the last living heir of House Corvus. And in my world, that makes you worth more than kingdoms." The rain fell harder, drowning the gaslights one by one, until only darkness remained. Chapter 2. Sanctuary and Shadow. Carriage moved through streets Elena didn't recognize, pulled by horses that made no sound against the cobblestones. She held Mira close, the child's warmth a fragile anchor against the unreality of everything that had happened in the last hour. Lord Ashenfell sat across from them, perfectly still in a way that reminded Elena he wasn't human. Didn't breathe like humans did. Didn't fidget or shift weight or perform any of the small unconscious movements that marked living things. He simply existed, watching the rain streak across the dark windows with eyes that caught every flicker of passing light. "Where are you taking us?" Elena asked, breaking the silence that had stretched since they'd entered the carriage. "Somewhere House Valentius won't dare follow." His voice was measured, distant. "My estate lies outside the old city, beyond the territories claimed by the lesser houses. And we're just supposed to trust you?" His gaze shifted to her, amber eyes unreadable. "No, trust is earned, not given. But you will accept my protection because the alternative is worse." Elena's fingers tightened on Mira's shoulder. The child had finally dozed off, exhausted by fear and confusion. She was too young to fully understand. "You said I'm an heir. To what?" "My grandmother worked in a bookshop. My mother was a seamstress. We're nobody. Your grandmother lied to protect you. Your mother likely never knew the truth." Lord Ashenfell leaned forward slightly, and Elena forced herself not to flinch. House Corvus was one of the founding bloodlines, established when the Great Compact was signed. They held the East, commanded respect from every faction. But 2 centuries ago, they were destroyed in a purge. Every vampire, every blood-bound servant, every human who carried their mark hunted down and killed. Why? Politics, power, fear. His expression darkened. House Corvus refused to participate in the blood wars. They believed in the old ways: consent, partnership, mutual survival between human and vampire. The other houses saw them as weak, dangerous, a threat to the natural order. Elena absorbed this, her mind racing. "And my grandmother?" "Survived by hiding. By pretending to be human, unmarked and unremarkable." He gestured to her wrist. "That mark should have faded when House Corvus fell. The fact that you and your daughter both bear it means the bloodline is stronger than anyone realized. It means House Corvus isn't truly dead." The carriage turned sharply, and through the window Elena glimpsed iron gates opening onto a long drive lined with ancient oaks. The trees seemed to lean inward, their branches forming a tunnel that blocked out the sky. "What do you want from us?" she asked quietly. Lord Ashenfell was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried an edge of something Elena couldn't name: regret, perhaps, or old grief finally finding words. 200 years ago, I stood by and did nothing while House Corvus burned. I told myself it was necessary, that the blood wars had to end, no matter the cost." His hands tightened on the silver-headed cane he carried. "I've regretted that choice every night since." The vulnerability in his admission shocked Elena more than anything else he'd said. This creature, this ancient thing that commanded other vampires with a word, carried guilt like a wound that wouldn't heal. The carriage stopped before a manor house that rose from the darkness like something from a fever dream. Gothic spires pierced the rain-heavy clouds, and candlelight flickered behind tall windows, casting shadows that danced like living things. Lord Ashenfell stepped out first, then offered his hand to help Elena down. His touch was still cool, but steadier than she'd expected. Careful as he guided her and Mira from the carriage to the covered entrance, the doors opened before they reached them, revealing a grand foyer lit by hundreds of candles in wrought iron chandeliers. Elena caught glimpses of dark wood paneling, oil paintings in gilded frames, carpets rich as blood. Mrs. Thorne will show you to your rooms, Lord Ashenfell said, as an older woman appeared from a side corridor. Human, Elena realized with relief. Her warmth, her scent, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, all marked her as mortal. Welcome, Mrs. Thorne said, her voice kind, despite the strangeness of the circumstances. Let's get the little one into bed, shall we? Elena wanted to refuse, to demand more answers, but Mira stirred against her shoulder, whimpering softly. Her daughter needed rest, needed safety, even if that safety came wrapped in shadows and ancient guilt. I'll find you when you're settled, Lord Ashenfell said. We have much to discuss, Mrs. Thorne led them up a sweeping staircase to the second floor, then down a corridor lined with more portraits, pale faces with knowing eyes, spanning centuries of fashion and formal dress. She opened a door onto a suite that took Elena's breath away. The bedroom was enormous, dominated by a four-poster bed draped in midnight blue silk. A fire crackled in an ornate fireplace, and through an open door Elena glimpsed a bathroom with a copper tub large enough to swim in. There are clothes in the wardrobe, Mrs. Thorne said gently. Nightgowns for you both, and something warmer for tomorrow. Lord Ashenfell thought you might not have time to pack. How long has he been planning this? Elena asked. Mrs. Thorne's expression softened. He wasn't planning anything, dear, but he's always prepared. That's how you survive as long as he has. She moved toward the door, then paused. He's not what the stories make him out to be. The monster, I mean. He's just very, very old and very, very tired. After Mrs. Thorne left, Elena settled Mira into the massive bed, tucking blankets around her daughter's small form. The child sighed, burrowing deeper into warmth and safety. Trusting in a way that broke Elena's heart, she moved to the window, pushing aside heavy curtains to stare out at grounds she couldn't fully see in the darkness. Somewhere beyond these walls, vampires hunted for her, wanted to claim her for reasons she barely understood. And somewhere in this house, an ancient vampire king carried guilt like a penance, offering protection he believed he owed to ghosts. Elena touched the mark on her wrist, feeling it pulse faintly beneath her fingertips. Whatever she'd been before tonight was gone. Now she stood at the threshold of a world she'd never imagined, with only a monster's promise standing between her daughter and the dark. Chapter 3. The in-between. Horselina woke to silence so complete it felt unnatural. No traffic sounds, no distant voices, no hum of modern life, just the whisper of wind against old glass and the settling groan of ancient timber. Mira still slept, her breathing soft and even in the pre-dawn darkness. Elena slipped from the bed, wrapping herself in the velvet robe she'd found draped across a chair. The fabric was luxurious against her skin, probably worth more than everything she'd owned before tonight. She moved through the suite, restless and unsettled. Through the window, the grounds stretched endlessly, dark shapes of gardens and trees barely visible against the lightening sky. How large was this estate? How far from the city, from anything resembling the life she'd known? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Elena? Mrs. Thorne's voice came through the door. I've brought breakfast, if you're awake. Elena opened the door to find the older woman balancing a tray laden with covered dishes, a pot of tea steaming gently in the cool air. The kindness in her eyes made Elena's throat tighten. Thank you, Elena managed. You didn't have to. Nonsense. You need your strength. Mrs. Thorne set the tray on a small table by the window. Lord Ashenfell asked me to tell you he'll be unavailable until sunset. He's resting. The delicate phrasing made Elena's skin prickle. Resting, sleeping, the sleep of the dead, locked away from daylight that would burn him to ash. The reality of what he was hit her again, sharp and disorienting. How long have you worked for him? Elena asked. Mrs. Thorne poured tea with practiced ease, her movements efficient and calm. 30 years come spring. He found me when I had nowhere else to go, gave me purpose and safety. He's a good man, miss. Don't let the stories convince you otherwise. He's not a man at all. No, Mrs. Thorne agreed quietly. But he's not a monster either. He's something in between, trying to be better than what his nature demands. She met Elena's eyes. Give him a chance. You might be surprised. After Mrs. Thorne left, Elena managed to eat, though the food tasted like ash in her mouth. Mira woke shortly after, disoriented and frightened until Elena gathered her close. Murmuring reassurances she didn't quite believe herself, they spent the day exploring the suite. Then the corridor beyond. When cabin fever grew too strong to resist, Elena kept Mira close, hyper-aware of every shadow, every creak of floorboards. The manor was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, each more opulent than the last. They found a library that stretched 3 stories high, books lining walls, accessible only by narrow spiral staircases. A music room with instruments under dust covers. A conservatory where tropical plants grew in impossible profusion, despite the autumn chill outside, but certain doors remained locked, and Elena didn't try to open them. She knew instinctively what lay behind those barriers: Lord Ashenfell's private chambers. The places where he retreated when dawn came creeping. As afternoon faded toward evening, Elena felt tension building in her chest. Soon he would wake. Soon she would have to face him again. This creature who held her daughter's life in his pale hands. She was in the library when she heard movement below, footsteps too quiet to be human, moving with purpose through the lower floors. Her pulse quickened. "Mira, stay here," she whispered, settling her daughter in a reading nook with a picture book. "Don't leave this spot, understand?" The child nodded, eyes wide but trusting. Elena descended the main staircase, following the sound of movement to a study she hadn't discovered in their earlier explorations. Lord Ashenfell stood before a massive desk, sorting through papers with movements so precise they seemed choreographed. He'd changed clothes: dark trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars so old they'd faded to silver lines. He didn't look up when she entered. "You slept poorly." It wasn't a question. Elena wondered how he knew. Could he hear her heartbeat from rooms away? Smell the exhaustion on her skin? "It's hard to sleep when you don't know if you'll wake up," she said. "Fair enough." He set down the papers, finally meeting her gaze. In the lamplight, his eyes looked more human brown instead of amber, though shadows still moved in their depths. "I've sent word to the other houses. Inform them that you and your daughter are under my protection, subject to the laws of hospitality and blood right. Will that stop them? It will make them cautious. House Ashenfell is the oldest bloodline, the strongest. Most won't risk open conflict." His expression darkened. "But there are always those who see opportunity in chaos. We must be prepared." Elena moved closer, studying him in the fading light. He held himself so carefully. She realized every gesture controlled, every movement measured, as though he feared what might happen if he let himself act on instinct. "What do you want from me?" she asked again, the question sharper this time. "You said you felt guilty about House Corvus, but guilt doesn't explain why you're doing this. Protecting us puts you at risk, doesn't it?" Lord Ashenfell was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that made Elena's breath catch. "Your grandmother and I were friends once. Before the purge, before everything burned. She was human, but she carried the mark of blood-bound servant to House Corvus with gifts of foresight and wisdom." His hands tightened on the desk's edge. "I promised her I would protect her bloodline if they ever needed me. I failed that promise for 2 centuries. I won't fail again." The vulnerability in his admission stunned Elena. This ancient creature, this vampire king, carried promises like sacred oaths. "She never mentioned you," Elena said softly. "No, she wouldn't have. Knowing my name would have put you in danger." He straightened, and the moment of openness passed, replaced by that careful control. "You need to understand something, Elena. Staying here, under my protection, means accepting certain realities." "What realities?" "I am not human. My instincts are predatory, my nature bound to blood and darkness. There will be times when you see me feed, when you witness things that frighten you." His eyes held hers, unflinching. "I have enemies who would use you against me, and proximity to me brings risks you cannot imagine. You're trying to scare me away. I'm trying to be honest." He moved around the desk, stopping a careful distance from her, close enough to speak quietly, far enough to maintain space. "House Valentius won't be the only threat. There are older things in the dark, Elena. Things that predate the great houses, that answer to no law but hunger. They will smell your blood, recognize your heritage. And they will come." Elena's heart hammered, but she didn't retreat. "Then teach me to survive them." Something flickered in Lord Ashenfell's expression: surprise, perhaps, or reluctant admiration. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Fear, helplessness, fragility." His gaze traced her face as though memorizing it. "But you've survived worse than vampires. haven't you? I can see it in the way you hold yourself. The scars you carry aren't all visible. Elena's throat tightened. Marcus, the betrayal, the public humiliation when he'd left her for someone younger, richer, better connected. She'd rebuilt herself from that ruin, found strength in single motherhood and quiet dignity. We all carry scars, she said quietly. Yes, Lord Ashenfell agreed. We do. The moment stretched between them. Fragile and strange, two damaged creatures finding unexpected common ground. Then Mira's scream shattered the quiet. High and terrified, echoing through the manor like a knife through silk, Elena ran. Chapter 4. Blood and mercy. Elena's legs burned as she raced up the stairs, her heart slamming against her ribs. Behind her, she heard Lord Ashenfell move, not running, but flowing through space with that impossible speed that defied physics. He reached the library before her, materializing in the doorway like smoke made solid. Elena pushed past him, scanning desperately for Mira. The child stood frozen in the reading nook, her face white as paper. Before her, crouched between the shelves, was a woman or something wearing a woman's shape. Pale skin stretched too tight over bones, eyes black as oil, fingers ending in claws that had carved deep gouges in the wooden floor. Step away from the child, Lord Ashenfell said, his voice carrying a tone Elena had never heard before. Command laced with violence, authority backed by centuries of power. The creature's head snapped toward him, movements too jerky to be human. When it spoke, its voice scraped like metal on stone. Ashenfell's pet human. How delicious. Housem sends its regards. Mordva hasn't existed for 300 years. Mordva never dies. We just sleep. The creature smiled, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. And we hunger when we wake. Elena moved on instinct, placing herself between the thing and her daughter. The creature's attention shifted to her, those oil-black eyes widening with recognition. The Corvus mark, it hissed. Fresh blood. Strong blood. The little king protects his treasure well. Leave, Lord Ashenfell said, and the word carried weight that made the air itself shudder. By the laws of hospitality and the ancient compact, you have no claim here. Laws? The creature laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Mordva predates your laws, little king. We fed when your ancestors were still human, still warm, still dying. It moved then, faster than Elena could track, lunging, not for Mira, but for her. Lord Ashenfell was faster. He became a blur of motion, intercepting the creature mid-leap. They collided with force that shattered a bookshelf, sending ancient volumes cascading to the floor. Elena grabbed Mira, pulling her daughter close, shielding her eyes from the violence unfolding before them. The fight was brutal and efficient. The Mordva creature moved with feral rage, all claws and teeth and inhuman strength. But Lord Ashenfell moved like death itself, precise, controlled, devastating. He caught the creature's wrist, twisted with surgical precision, and Elena heard bones snap like dry kindling. The creature shrieked, black ichor spraying from the wound. It tried to retreat, but Lord Ashenfell was already there, his hand closing around its throat. You violated sanctuary, he said, his voice empty of everything but cold judgment. You threatened those under my protection. The penalty is death. Wait, the creature gasped, its earlier confidence evaporating. Mercy, I gave House Mordva mercy once. I let you sleep instead of burning your crypts to ash. Lord Ashenfell's grip tightened, and Elena saw something terrible in his expression, not rage, but absolute certainty. That mercy ends tonight. What happened next would haunt Elena's dreams for years. Lord Ashenfell moved with clinical efficiency, his free hand striking the creature's chest with force that should have been impossible. There was a wet, tearing sound, and when he withdrew his hand, he held something dark and pulsing, the creature's heart, still beating weakly. The Mordva thing collapsed, its form already beginning to dissolve into ash and shadow. Lord Ashenfell stood over the remains, the heart crumbling to dust in his palm, his white shirt splattered with black ichor that steamed faintly in the lamplight. For a long moment, no one moved, no one breathed. Then Lord Ashenfell turned to face them, and Elena saw the monster for the first time. His eyes blazed amber gold, reflecting light like an animal's. His canines had elongated, sharp, and deadly. Black veins traced patterns beneath his pale skin, mapping the paths of blood and power. Mama, Mira whimpered, burying her face against Elena's shoulder. The sound seemed to break something in Lord Ashenfell. The inhuman light faded from his eyes. The fangs receded. He became, once again, the careful creature who measured every movement, controlled every instinct. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You shouldn't have seen that. Elena's hands trembled as she held Mira, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. Is she safe now? For the moment. But House Mordva doesn't send scouts unless they're planning something larger. He looked down at his hands, still stained with the creature's remains. I need to strengthen the wards, contact my allies. This was a test they wanted to see how far I'd go to protect you. And now they know, yes, his expression darkened. Now they know I'll kill for you. Which makes you even more valuable to my enemies, Mrs. Thorne appeared in the doorway, her face pale but composed. She took in the destroyed bookshelf, the ash scattered across the floor, and simply nodded. I'll prepare the warding chamber, my lord, and bring fresh clothes. After she left, Lord Ashenfell moved to the window, putting distance between himself and Elena. You asked earlier what I want from you, he said, his voice rough. The truth? I want to believe that protecting you will balance the scales, that saving House Corvus's last heirs will somehow redeem me for letting the rest of them burn. Elena stood slowly, still holding Mira close. Redemption doesn't work like that, I know. He turned to face her, and in the lamplight he looked ancient and tired and unbearably lonely. But it's all I have left to try. The vulnerability in his admission cut through Elena's fear. This creature had just killed with terrifying efficiency, had revealed the monster beneath the careful control. But he'd done it to protect her daughter, to honor a promise made to a woman who died centuries ago. What's House Mordva? Elena asked, needing to understand. Old vampires. The first generation, turned before the Great Compact, before laws governed the night. Lord Ashenfell's jaw tightened. They don't believe in consent or partnership. They see humans as livestock, nothing more. Most houses suppressed them centuries ago, drove them into hiding. If they're waking now, it's because of me, because of what you represent. The return of House Corvus threatens the current power balance. Some will want to ally with you. Others will want to eliminate you before you can claim your heritage. He met her eyes. I told you staying here was dangerous. I meant it. Elena looked down at Mira, her daughter's face still hidden against her shoulder. She thought of their small apartment in the city, the quiet life they'd built from the ruins of betrayal. That life was gone now, burned away the moment those first vampires had found them in the rain. Teach me, she said firmly. Teach me how to survive in your world. Not just hide behind your protection, but actually survive. Lord Ashenfell studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. Very well. But understand, learning to survive among vampires means learning to think like them. To understand cruelty and power, and the weight of immortal grudges. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. It will change you. I've been changed before, Elena said quietly. I survived that too. Something that might have been respect flickered in Lord Ashenfell's eyes. Then we begin tomorrow night. For now, let Mrs. Thorne settle you somewhere safer while I reinforce the wards. As he moved toward the door, Elena found herself speaking without thinking. Thank you for protecting her. Lord Ashenfell paused, his back to her. I failed your grandmother. I won't fail you. Then he was gone, moving with that unnatural silence, leaving only ash and the lingering smell of violence in his wake. Elena held Mira close, feeling her daughter's heartbeat against her own, and wondered what she'd just agreed to learn. Chapter 5. Lessons in Darkness. Warding chamber lay deep beneath the manor, access through a hidden door in the wine cellar. Elena descended stone steps worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, Mira's hand clutched tightly in hers. Candles flickered in iron sconces, casting shadows that danced like living things against walls carved with symbols she didn't recognize. Lord Ashenfell waited at the bottom, his presence somehow larger in the confined space. He'd changed into dark clothing, the black fabric making his pale skin seem to glow in the candlelight. Behind him, chalk circles marked the floor in intricate patterns, and Elena caught the metallic scent of blood mixed with herbs she couldn't name. This is where I strengthen the protections, he said, gesturing to the symbols. Old magic, predating vampire and human conflict. It requires blood, will, and time. Mrs. Thorne appeared from a side chamber, her arms full of blankets and pillows. I've made a nest for the little one in the reading alcove, she said gently. It's warm there and safe. She can sleep while you talk. Elena hesitated, but Mira was already drooping with exhaustion, the terror of earlier having drained her small reserves. She let Mrs. Thorne settle her daughter in the alcove, A cozy space lined with cushions and protected by its own circle of symbols. When she returned to Lord Ashenfell, he was tracing new marks onto the floor with careful precision, his movements meditative. "Sit," he said, without looking up, "and ask your questions. I can feel them building inside you." Elena sat on a stone bench carved into the wall. What did that creature mean when it said House Mordva predates your laws? Exactly what it sounds like. Lord Ashenfell finished a particularly complex symbol before continuing. When humans first learned to make fire, we were already old. We hunted without conscience, fed without mercy. It took millennia before some of us learned to see humans as anything more than prey, and you were one of those who learned. Eventually, his voice carried old shame. I was turned 1,000 years ago, during a time when might made right, and human life was cheap as water. I spent centuries as a monster before I understood what I'd become. He straightened, meeting her eyes. The Great Compact changed everything. 7 vampire houses agreed to rules: consent before feeding, protection of human servants, limits on killing. We created the blood courts to enforce these laws, and House Corvus was part of this compact. They were its strongest advocates. Your ancestors believed vampires and humans could coexist, that we could build something better than endless predation. Lord Ashenfell's expression darkened. But peace requires sacrifice from both sides. Some houses saw House Corvus's ideals as weakness. When the blood wars began, they used that perceived weakness to justify genocide. Elena absorbed this, her mind reeling. What happened to my family? The real story, not just that they were destroyed. Lord Ashenfell was quiet for a long moment, his attention returning to the symbols on the floor. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of memory. House Corvus held the Eastern Territories, a network of cities where humans and vampires lived in genuine partnership. They pioneered blood-sharing contracts, consensual feeding arrangements, even mixed councils where humans had equal voice. He drew another symbol, this one resembling a rose with thorns that spiraled outward. Lady Morgana Corvus was their matriarch, brilliant, compassionate, dangerous when threatened. She and I disagreed on many things, but I respected her vision. What happened to her? House Valentius claimed she was hoarding human blood servants, violating the resource-sharing agreements between houses. They brought the accusation before the blood courts, his hand stilled on the chalk. I was one of the judges. I could have stopped what came next, but I chose politics over justice. I voted to allow an investigation. Elena's chest tightened. And House Valentius didn't wait for the investigation to conclude. They attacked at dawn, when House Corvus was most vulnerable, burned their sanctuaries, slaughtered their vampires in their sleep chambers. Lord Ashenfell's voice went flat, emotionless, in the way of someone recounting unbearable truth. The humans bound to House Corvus fought back. They were killed too. Men, women, children, anyone who bore the mark or showed loyalty. The massacre lasted 3 days, and you did nothing. I did worse than nothing. I enforced the blood court's ruling that House Corvus's territories were forfeit, that their survivors had no legal standing. He finally looked at her, and Elena saw centuries of guilt etched in his expression. Your grandmother escaped because she was visiting distant relatives when the attack came. She was pregnant with your mother, bearing the mark, but far enough from the carnage to disappear. I found her weeks later, helped her vanish completely. It was the least I could do. Elena's hands trembled with anger. She couldn't fully name. You let my family be murdered. Yes. No excuses, no justifications, just brutal honesty. And now you want to what? Make up for it by protecting me? I don't expect forgiveness, Elena. I don't deserve it. Lord Ashenfell set down the chalk, his movements careful and precise. But I can give you knowledge, power, the tools to ensure what happened to House Corvus never happens again. By teaching me to think like a vampire, by teaching you to survive among them, to understand their weaknesses, their fears, their power structures. He moved closer, and Elena fought the urge to retreat. You carry blood. That makes you valuable, but value cuts both ways. Some will want to control you, bind you through blood oaths and political marriage. Others will want you dead before you can reclaim your heritage and upset the current balance. Political marriage? Elena's voice came out sharper than intended. Vampire society is built on bloodlines and alliances. An unmated heir with your lineage? Lord Ashenfell's expression turned grim. Every ambitious house will see opportunity. They'll court you, threaten you, offer protection in exchange for binding yourself to their line. The implications made Elena's skin crawl. I won't be anyone's political pawn. Good. That's the first lesson. Know your worth and refuse to diminish it for convenience. He returned to his symbols, speaking as he worked. The second lesson: vampire society respects strength above all else. Not physical strength, though that matters. Strength of will. The ability to hold boundaries even when threatened. Like you did tonight, killing that creature. Exactly. I could have imprisoned it, bargained with House Mordva for peace. But showing mercy would have signaled weakness. Every house watching, and they are always watching, saw that I will kill to protect what's mine. His eyes met hers. Now they know the cost of threatening you. Elena shivered despite the chamber's warmth. What's mine, she repeated. I'm not yours. No, Lord Ashenfell agreed quietly. But in vampire politics, claiming protection creates a bond in the eyes of the blood courts. By accepting my sanctuary, by allowing me to kill in your defense, you've acknowledged my right to guard you. He held up a hand before she could protest. This doesn't mean ownership. It means I've staked my reputation, my honor, on keeping you safe. Breaking that bond now would weaken both of us. So I'm trapped here. You're protected here. There's a difference. He finished the last symbol and stood, surveying his work with a critical eye. The wards will hold for now. But House Mordva's attack was a message. Other old things are stirring, drawn by rumors of House Corvus's return. We have perhaps a fortnight before something worse comes calling. A fortnight to learn 1,000 years of politics? A fortnight to learn enough to survive the first gathering. Lord Ashenfell's expression turned serious. In 3 weeks, the Blood Courts convene for the Autumn Council. Every major house will attend. They'll want to see you, assess the threat you pose, decide how to respond to your existence. Elena's breath caught. I have to appear before them? If you don't, they'll assume weakness. Or worse, that you're hiding something worth investigating. He moved to stand before her, his presence commanding but not threatening. I can prepare you, teach you the protocols, the power plays, the subtle ways vampires communicate dominance and submission. But you must trust me enough to learn. Elena looked past him to where Mira slept, her daughter's small form peaceful in the candlelight. Everything she'd built, the quiet life, the safety, the distance from her past, had been stripped away in one rain-soaked night. Now she stood in a vampire's warding chamber, learning the politics of creatures who'd slaughtered her ancestors. But she'd survived Marcus's betrayal, survived public humiliation and single motherhood, and starting over with nothing. She could survive this too. Teach me, Elena said quietly. Everything. Lord Ashenfell nodded slowly, something that might have been respect flickering in his ancient eyes. Then we begin now. First lesson in vampire society: never show fear, even when you're terrified. I'm not terrified, Elena lied. His smile was slight, sad, knowing. Good. Hold on to that lie until it becomes truth. Chapter 6. The weight of crowns. 3 nights of lessons had left Elena's mind spinning with information she'd never wanted to know. Vampire hierarchy operated on blood age and bloodline purity. The feeding compact required verbal consent renewed monthly. Blood oaths bound servants to houses through ritual scarification and exchange of vita. Political marriages cemented alliances through permanent blood bonds that linked fates across centuries. Lord Ashenfell proved a patient but exacting teacher. He drilled her on house genealogies, made her memorize the 7 founding bloodlines and their current representatives. He taught her the formal greetings, the subtle body language that communicated deference or challenge, the precise phrasing required to accept or refuse a blood oath without giving offense. But tonight felt different. Elena sensed it the moment she entered the study where they'd been meeting after Mira fell asleep. Lord Ashenfell stood at the window, his posture rigid with tension she'd learned to recognize. What's wrong? She asked. He turned, and Elena saw the message clutched in his hand, heavy paper sealed with wax she didn't recognize. House Valentius has requested an audience. Tomorrow night, here, under terms of neutral parley. Elena's stomach dropped. The same house that destroyed mine? Yes. Lord Ashenfell set the letter on his desk with movements that spoke of carefully leashed violence. They're sending Lord Victor Valentius himself, their patriarch, ancient even by our standards. He wants to assess the legitimacy of the Corvus's claim and discuss terms of peaceful coexistence. That's a trap, almost certainly. But refusing the parley would be seen as an act of aggression, grounds for the blood courts to revoke my protection of you. His jaw tightened. They're forcing my hand, making me choose between keeping you safe and maintaining my political standing. Elena moved closer, studying the letter. The script was elegant, formal, each word chosen with precision. What happens if you lose your standing? I become outcast. My alliances dissolve. My territories become contested ground. My blood oaths void. Lord Ashenfell's voice remained calm, but Elena heard the current of anger beneath it. More importantly, you lose the protection of House Ashenfell. Every ambitious vampire in the region would see you as unclaimed territory, so we meet with them. It's dangerous, Elena. Victor Valentius led the assault on House Corvus personally. He wore your ancestors' blood like a badge of honor. Lord Ashenfell's eyes blazed amber for a moment before he controlled them, sitting across a table from him, maintaining civility while he evaluates whether you're worth more alive or dead. It will require every ounce of strength you possess. Then it's fortunate. You've been teaching me. Elena kept her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. What are the rules of neutral parley? Lord Ashenfell studied her for a long moment, and Elena saw something shift in his expression, recognition, perhaps, that she wasn't going to back down. Both parties may bring to attendance. No weapons visible, though concealed ones are assumed. The host provides refreshments appropriate to each species. Violence breaks parley and voids all political protections for the aggressor, so they can't kill me outright, not during the meeting itself. But accidents happen. Poisoned wine. Blood servants who go rogue. Unfortunate incidents in the aftermath. His hands curled into fists. Victor doesn't need to kill you himself. He just needs to create circumstances where your death appears natural or justified. Elena absorbed this, her mind racing through the lessons he'd taught her. What does he really want? Information. To see if you're truly House Corvus reborn, or just a human with inherited marks. To gauge how much I've invested in protecting you. Lord Ashenfell moved to pour himself a drink from a crystal decanter. Blood, Elena had learned, mixed with wine to make it palatable, and to send a message to the other houses that challenging Valentius' dominance carries consequences, by making an example of me, by demonstrating that even under Ashenfell protection, Corvus blood isn't safe. He drained the glass in one swallow, a rare show of agitation. I should never have brought you here. I should have hidden you somewhere remote. Somewhere the old politics couldn't reach. You said yourself hiding signals weakness. Elena moved to stand across from him, the desk between them, like a neutral zone. And I'm tired of hiding. I hid from my marriage's failure, hid from the scandal, hid from everything that hurt. It didn't make me safer. It just made me smaller. Lord Ashenfell's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You're not what I expected when I found you in that alley. What did you expect? Someone who needed saving. A victim to be protected and sheltered. His eyes held hers. But you're not fragile, are you? You're steel wrapped in flesh, forged by survival. The observation struck something deep in Elena's chest. No one had seen her that way before, not Marcus, who'd wanted her decorative and compliant. Not her mother, who'd taught her to endure rather than fight. Not even herself. Most days, I've learned to be, she said quietly. A knock interrupted the moment. Mrs. Thorne entered, her face drawn with worry. My lord, there are riders approaching the gates. 3 horses bearing House Valentius colors. Lord Ashenfell's entire demeanor shifted, becoming the ancient vampire king Elena had glimpsed in the library. They're early, testing boundaries already. He turned to Elena. Go to Mira, lock yourselves in your chambers, and don't open the door for anyone but Mrs. Thorne or me. No, Elena straightened her spine, channeling every ounce of defiance she possessed. If they're here to assess me, let them see I'm not afraid. Elena, you said vampire society respects strength. Hiding in my room while you deal with them shows exactly the kind of weakness Victor wants to exploit. She held his gaze, refusing to flinch. I may not be vampire, but I'm still the last heir of House Corvus. I won't cower. Lord Ashenfell looked at her for a long moment, conflict warring in his expression. Then slowly, he nodded. Very well, but you follow my lead. Speak only when spoken to directly. And if I tell you to leave, you go immediately. Agreed? Agreed. Mrs. Thorne, have the formal receiving room prepared. Blood wine for our guests, tea for Miss Elena. And send someone to watch over Mira. No one enters that chamber under any circumstances. As Mrs. Thorne hurried away, Lord Ashenfell moved to a cabinet and withdrew a small velvet box. Inside lay a pendant, silver worked into the shape of a crescent moon pierced by a thorned rose, identical to Elena's mark. This belonged to your grandmother, he said quietly. She left it with me for safekeeping before she disappeared. It marks you officially as House Corvus, recognized by the old laws. He fastened it around Elena's neck with careful fingers, his touch cool against her skin. Wear it tonight. Let Victor see exactly what he's facing. The pendant settled against Elena's sternum, surprisingly heavy. She touched it, feeling power humming faintly through the metal. Old magic, bound into silver through rituals she couldn't imagine. What if he tries to claim I'm an imposter? Then I invoke blood right trial. Ancient law allows any vampire to verify lineage through taste. Lord Ashenfell's voice went hard. He'd have to feed from you directly, in front of witnesses. Your blood would prove or disprove your heritage. Elena's heart stuttered. And if it proves I'm really Corvus, then every house in the region will have to acknowledge your claim. You'd have legal standing to reclaim territories, demand reparations, even call for investigation into the original massacre. His eyes met hers. Which is why Victor will do everything in his power to discredit you without invoking blood right. The truth is his enemy. Footsteps echoed in the entrance hall, multiple sets, moving with predatory grace. Elena's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, evenly. She thought of Mira sleeping upstairs, safe behind wards and locked doors. Thought of her grandmother, who'd survived genocide through courage and cunning. Thought of every time she'd been underestimated and had proved people wrong. Ready? Lord Ashenfell asked. Elena touched the pendant at her throat, feeling her heritage settle around her like armor. Ready. They walked together toward the receiving room. Toward the vampires who'd murdered her family. Toward a confrontation 2 centuries in the making. And for the first time since the rain-soaked alley, Elena Corvus wasn't afraid. Chapter 7. The Sins of Fathers. The receiving room glowed with candlelight. Shadows dancing across walls hung with tapestries depicting centuries of House Ashenfell history. Elena stood beside Lord Ashenfell, her hands steady despite the terror singing through her veins. 3 figures entered with the fluid grace of apex predators. The first 2 were clearly attendants, a woman with white blonde hair and a man whose eyes gleamed red in the candlelight. But it was the third who commanded attention. Lord Victor Valentius looked barely 30, with aristocratic features and dark hair shot through with silver. He wore modern clothing cut with old-world elegance, and his eyes pale gray, almost colorless, swept the room with the assessment of someone who'd spent centuries evaluating threats. Those eyes settled on Elena, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Lord Ashenfell, Victor said, his voice cultured and cold. How gracious of you to receive us on such short notice, Lord Victor. Ashenfell's tone matched his guest's formality. Your message indicated urgency. I trust your journey was uneventful? Quite. Victor's gaze never left Elena. Though I confess, curiosity drove us to hasten our arrival. Rumors of House Corvus's resurrection are intriguing. Lord Ashenfell gestured to the chairs arranged around a low table where Mrs. Thorne had set out refreshments. Please, be seated. We have much to discuss. They arranged themselves with careful protocol. Victor in the primary guest chair, his attendants flanking him. Lord Ashenfell took the host's position, and Elena sat to his right, the placement declaring her status as protected, not servant. Victor accepted a crystal glass of blood wine from Mrs. Thorne, his movements languid and controlled. Miss Elena Corvus, I presume? Or should I say, the woman claiming to be Elena Corvus. My lineage isn't a claim, Elena said, keeping her voice level. It's a fact. Facts require evidence. Victor sipped his wine, his expression unreadable. A birthmark proves nothing. There are rituals to forge such marks, blood magic that could fool even experienced eyes. Then invoke blood right trial, Elena challenged, remembering Lord Ashenfell's lessons. Let my blood speak for itself. Something flickered in Victor's eyes, surprise perhaps that she knew the law. Bold. But blood right carries consequences. You may not understand, child. If you're proven false, the penalty is death, and if she's proven true. Lord Ashenfell interjected smoothly. What then, Victor? Do you return the territories you seized? Pay reparations for the genocide you orchestrated? The word hung in the air like a blade. Victor's attendants tensed, hands moving subtly toward weapons Elena was certain they carried. Despite parley rules, Victor himself remained perfectly still. Only his eyes betraying emotion, a flash of something dark and dangerous. Careful, Ashenfell. Accusations of genocide are serious charges to level without proof. I was there, Lord Ashenfell said quietly. I saw the aftermath. I counted the bodies. 63 vampires burned in their sleep chambers. Over 200 blood servants slaughtered. Countless humans killed for the crime of bearing the Corvus mark. His voice remained calm, but Elena heard the fury beneath. I voted to allow your investigation. You used that permission to commit mass murder. I followed the blood court's ruling, Victor said. House Corvus was found guilty of hoarding blood servants, violating resource-sharing protocols. The punishment was justified under law, except they weren't hoarding servants, Elena said, the words coming before she could stop them. They were building partnerships, teaching vampires and humans to coexist. Victor's attention snapped back to her, and Elena saw calculation in those pale eyes. You speak with conviction for one who wasn't there. Did Ashenfell fill your head with romantic notions of what House Corvus represented? My grandmother filled my head with truth, Elena countered. Before she died, she told me about Lady Morgana, about the councils where humans had equal voice, about blood-sharing contracts that protected both species. She leaned forward slightly, holding Victor's gaze. About vampires like you, who saw that partnership as a threat to their power. For a long moment, silence stretched taut as wire. Then Victor smiled, and it was the coldest thing Elena had ever seen. Your grandmother, he said softly. Elara Corvus, wasn't it? Lady Morgana's favorite servant. I remember her clever tongue, sharp mind, entirely too influential for a human. His smile widened. We searched for her after the purge. Searched for years. Where did she hide, I wonder? Far from monsters like you, Elena said. Victor's attendants moved, not attacking, but shifting into ready positions. Lord Ashenfell's hand found Elena's beneath the table, his cool fingers a warning. Careful, you have fire, Victor observed. I'll grant you that. But fire burns out quickly without fuel to sustain it. He set down his glass with precise care. Let me be frank, Miss Corvus. Your existence is problematic. House Corvus's territories have been divided among the surviving houses for 2 centuries. Their blood oaths were dissolved, their contracts voided, their political alliances redistributed. Your claim threatens all of that. Good, Elena said. Victor's eyebrows rose. You think you can challenge the entire vampire hierarchy? You're one human woman with a child and a birthmark. She has my protection, Lord Ashenfell said, his voice carrying absolute authority. House Ashenfell's protection, bound by blood oath and honor. Any who move against her, move against me. Yes, about that. Victor leaned back, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. Your protection is noted, Ashenfell, but it raises questions. Why would the first of House Ashenfell, who stood by while House Corvus burned, suddenly champion their last heir? What changed? The question landed like a blow. Elena felt Lord Ashenfell tense beside her. I'm correcting a mistake, he said. How noble. Victor's tone dripped with mockery. Or perhaps, how convenient. House Ashenfell's influence has waned in recent decades. The younger houses grow bold, challenge your authority. But if you could bind the Corvus heir to your house through marriage or blood oath, you'd gain access to all their old alliances, their territories, their political leverage. Elena's breath caught. She looked at Lord Ashenfell, saw the muscle jumping in his jaw, the way his eyes had gone carefully blank. That's your game, isn't it? Victor continued, pressing his advantage. Use the girl to restore your own power. How very pragmatic. That's not. Elena started, but Victor cut her off. Not what he told you. Of course not. But consider, Miss Corvus, Lord Ashenfell finds you conveniently in danger, conveniently in need of protection. He brings you to his estate, begins training you in vampire politics, presents you with your grandmother's pendant. Victor's smile turned predatory. He's grooming you for a role in his political theater. When you appear before the blood courts, it will be as Ashenfell's creature, not as House Corvus reborn. That's a lie, Elena said, but doubt crept into her voice. She thought of the lessons, the careful instruction, the way Lord Ashenfell had prepared her for the Autumn Council. Had he been helping her survive, or positioning her as a political asset? Is it? Victor asked. Then let me offer you an alternative. Renounce any claim to House Corvus. Accept a generous settlement, wealth, property, safety for you and your daughter. Live your life free from vampire politics and the target these marks place on your back. In exchange for what? Elena demanded. Your silence. Your cooperation in declaring House Corvus officially extinct. A signed statement that you were mistaken about your heritage, that your marks are merely inherited tattoos with no political significance. Victor's voice softened into something almost kind. You could go back to your life, Elena. Raise your daughter in peace. Isn't that what you really want? It was tempting, God. It was tempting. To walk away from ancient grudges and blood-soaked politics. To reclaim the quiet safety she'd built for Mira. To stop being a pawn in games that predated her existence. But then Elena thought of her grandmother, who'd spent her whole life hiding. Of Lady Morgana and the 63 vampires burned in their sleep. Of the 200 servants slaughtered for loyalty to a house that believed in partnership over predation. She thought of the pendant heavy against her sternum. Legacy and responsibility bound in silver. No, Elena said firmly. I won't erase my family's memory to make your political life easier. Victor's expression hardened. Then you're a fool. House Corvus died because they refused to understand the realities of power. You're walking the same path, perhaps, Elena acknowledged. But I'm walking it with my eyes open. Then you'll die with them open too. Victor stood, his attendants rising with him. I came here hoping for reason. Instead, I find Ashenfell's puppet, playing at nobility. She doesn't understand. He looked at Lord Ashenfell. When this ends badly and her blood is on your hands. It wouldn't be the first time, Lord Ashenfell said quietly. Victor's smile was cruel. No, suppose it wouldn't. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Miss Corvus. Your grandmother didn't just hide from us. She hid something, documents, evidence, proof that House Corvus's destruction violated blood court law. We've searched for those documents for 2 centuries. I wonder if Ashenfell has found them? Elena's heart hammered. She knew nothing about documents, but Victor's intensity suggested they were crucial. If such evidence exists, Lord Ashenfell said, the blood courts will see it at the appropriate time. Will they? Victor's eyes gleamed. Or will they see only what you want them to see, Ashenfell? How convenient that you alone control access to the Corvus heir. He inclined his head in a mockery of polite farewell. Until the Autumn Council. Then he was gone, his attendants flowing after him like shadows. Elena sat frozen, Victor's words echoing in her mind. Was she being used? Had Lord Ashenfell's protection been genuine, or just another form of manipulation? She turned to face him, and found him already looking at her, ancient grief written in every line of his face. Is it true? She asked. Are you using me to restore your power? Lord Ashenfell was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, moving to the window that overlooked the dark grounds. Yes, he said simply. And no. Chapter 8. Fractured trust. The silence after Lord Ashenfell's admission felt like the space between lightning and thunder charged. Dangerous, inevitable. Explain, Elena demanded, her voice shaking with anger she could no longer contain. Now, Lord Ashenfell turned from the window, and in the candlelight he looked every one of his 1,000 years ancient, tired, carrying burdens that would crush ordinary men. Victor was right about one thing. House Ashenfell's influence has declined. The younger houses grow ambitious, test boundaries, challenge decisions that once would have been absolute. He moved back to his chair, but didn't sit, instead gripping its back with white-knuckled hands. Your return changes the political landscape. It forces the blood courts to revisit House Corvus's destruction, to question the legitimacy of territory divisions that have stood for centuries, and you benefit from that chaos. Yes, no hesitation, no softening of the truth. If you reclaim even a portion of House Corvus's former holdings, it disrupts alliances that currently work against me. It creates opportunities for new pacts, new power structures. His eyes met hers. Victor fears this. That's why he came here tonight, not to assess you, but to drive a wedge between us before we become too strong together. Elena laughed bitterly. So I'm a political tool after all. Just like he said, you're a person who deserves protection regardless of politics, Lord Ashenfell said quietly. But I'd be lying if I claimed altruism was my only motivation. I'm a vampire king, Elena. I've survived a millennium by understanding power and wielding it strategically. Saving you served multiple purposes, honoring my promise to your grandmother, yes, but also positioning House Ashenfell advantageously for what's coming. What's coming? War. The word fell like a stone into still water. The current peace is fragile, held together by ancient pacts and mutual fear. But the old generation grows complacent, and the young grow hungry. House Mordva's awakening is just the beginning. Others will follow older things, darker things, vampires who predate the Great Compact and see its rules as chains to be broken. Elena sank into her chair, her legs suddenly unsteady. And you think I can somehow stop this war? I think you represent an alternative to it. House Corvus built something the vampire world has never seen before or since: genuine partnership between species. Systems that benefited both human and vampire. Lord Ashenfell finally sat, his movements weighted with exhaustion. If you can reclaim even a shadow of that legacy, prove that cooperation is stronger than subjugation, you give the younger houses a reason to choose peace over conflict. That's insane. I'm one woman. I don't know anything about vampire politics beyond what you've taught me in 3 nights. You know more than you think. You've survived betrayal, rebuilt your life from ruins, protected your daughter against impossible odds. His voice softened. And you have something most vampires lost centuries ago: the ability to see us as something other than monsters or masters. You see the complexity, the possibility of redemption. Elena wanted to stay angry, to cling to the clarity of betrayal. But his words struck too close to truth. She'd been avoiding. She had seen him as more than monster, had witnessed his guilt, his careful control, his genuine care for Mrs. Thorne and the other humans in his household. The documents Victor mentioned, she said, changing tack. Do they exist? Lord Ashenfell's expression shifted, becoming guarded. Yes. Where? Hidden, safe, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Show me. Elena. No, she stood, anger reigniting. No more secrets. No more strategic withholding of information. If these documents are part of my heritage, I have a right to see them. For a long moment, Lord Ashenfell studied her, calculation warring with something softer in his ancient eyes. Then slowly, he nodded. Very well. But understand, what you're about to see will change everything. There's no going back once you know. He led her through the manor's winding corridors to a part of the house she'd never explored. They descended stairs that seemed to burrow into the earth itself, past the warding chamber to deeper levels where the air grew cold and still. Finally, they reached a door bound with silver and marked with symbols that made Elena's eyes water when she tried to focus on them. Lord Ashenfell spoke words in a language she didn't recognize, and the symbols flared bright before fading. The door swung open. Inside was a chamber lined with shelves, and on those shelves sat boxes, books, and bundles of papers, preserved with obvious care. Lord Ashenfell moved to a specific shelf and withdrew a leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with the Corvus mark. Your grandmother's, he said, handing it to Elena. She kept records of everything: the blood-sharing contracts, the council proceedings, the evidence of House Corvus's innocence. Elena opened the journal with trembling hands. The pages were filled with elegant handwriting, dates spanning decades. She flipped through, catching fragments of entries. Lord Victor grows more aggressive in his demands for exclusive feeding territories. Lady Morgana refuses, citing the compact's provisions for shared resources. Tensions escalate. The Blood Court summons us to answer charges of hoarding. Victor's doing, obviously. We prepare our defense, gather evidence of our compliance with all protocols. They came at dawn. I was away. Thank the old gods. Elias is dead. Morgana is dead. Everyone is dead. I can still smell the smoke. Elena's vision blurred with tears. She turned pages, found more entries written in shaking script. Ashenfell helped me disappear. I don't know why. Perhaps guilt. Perhaps he's playing a longer game than I can see. But I'm pregnant, and my daughter will never know this world. I'll make sure of it. I've hidden the evidence where they'll never find it. Let them search. Let them fear. One day, when it's safe, when House Corvus can rise again, this truth will burn them all. The final entry was dated 3 years before Elena's birth. If you're reading this, granddaughter I'll never meet, know that you are more than your blood. You are hope. You are the proof that House Corvus's dream didn't die in fire. Don't let them make you small. Don't let them make you afraid. And don't trust anyone completely, not even Ashenfell, who saved me but let my family burn. Elena closed the journal carefully, her hands shaking. She knew, even while you were helping her, she knew you couldn't be fully trusted. She was right to be cautious. Lord Ashenfell's voice was rough. I've lived too long, made too many compromises. Even my good intentions are tainted by strategy. Then why should I trust you now? You shouldn't, not blindly. He moved to stand before her, and Elena saw raw honesty in his expression. But trust isn't about certainty, Elena. It's about choosing to believe in someone's better nature despite evidence of their flaws. I have used you politically. I will continue to benefit from your existence. But I also genuinely want to keep you safe, to see House Corvus reborn, to prove that vampires can be more than parasites on humanity. Can you be? Elena challenged. More than parasites? I don't know, but I'd like the chance to find out. He held her gaze. Victor was wrong about one thing. I'm not grooming you to be my puppet. I'm trying to prepare you to be what House Corvus always represented. A bridge between worlds, a leader who commands respect through wisdom rather than fear. Elena wanted to believe him. God help her, despite everything. She wanted to trust this ancient creature who'd killed to protect her daughter, who'd taught her vampire politics with patient thoroughness, who looked at her like she mattered beyond her political utility. The Autumn Council, she said finally. What happens there? The blood courts will formally acknowledge your claim or reject it. If acknowledged, you'll have the right to petition for investigation into House Corvus's destruction, to reclaim territories, to demand representation on the ruling council. Lord Ashenfell's expression darkened. If rejected, you'll be declared imposter, and the penalty is death or exile beyond vampire territories. How do they decide? Debate, evidence, and ultimately, blood right trial if there's dispute. You'd be bound to a testing ritual, ancient magic that reads lineage in blood. It's painful, invasive, and absolutely conclusive. Elena absorbed this, her mind racing. And if I'm proven legitimate, then every house will have to acknowledge you. But acknowledgement doesn't mean acceptance. His voice went grim. Some will try to bind you through marriage or blood oaths. Others will try to eliminate you through subtler means. And a very few might actually want to help you succeed. Which are you? Lord Ashenfell smiled slightly, sadly. All three, depending on the day. Despite everything, Elena found herself almost smiling back. At least he was honest about his contradictions. A sound echoed from above, breaking glass. Then Mira's scream piercing the manor's depths. Lord Ashenfell moved instantly, becoming the blur of lethal grace Elena had seen in the library. She ran after him, her heart in her throat, terror overriding every other concern. They burst into the upper corridor to find Mrs. Thorne standing outside Mira's chamber, her face white with horror. I locked the door, she gasped. I swear I locked it. Lord Ashenfell kicked the door open. The chamber was empty. The window stood shattered, night wind stirring curtains, and on Mira's pillow lay a single black rose, tied with a ribbon bearing House Valentius's seal. Beneath it, a note in elegant script. She's ours now. Come to the old quarter ruins by midnight if you want her back. Come alone, or she dies. Chapter 9. Blood and Fury. Elena's world narrowed to a single point. Her daughter's empty bed, the shattered window, the mocking black rose. Everything else, politics, heritage, ancient grudges, fell away beneath the primal terror of a mother whose child had been taken. I'm going, she said, her voice deadly calm. Now, it's a trap, Lord Ashenfell said, but he was already moving, pulling weapons from a concealed cabinet, silver daggers, a short sword, vials of liquid that gleamed darkly in the candlelight. Victor wants to draw us out, force a confrontation where he controls the terrain. I don't care. Elena grabbed one of the daggers, testing its weight. The lessons on self-defense Lord Ashenfell had included in their training suddenly felt desperately inadequate. He has Mira. Nothing else matters. Lord Ashenfell caught her wrist, his grip gentle but firm. Then we do this intelligently. Victor expects you panicked and reckless. He expects me bound by his terms. His eyes blazed. Amber. We give him neither. The note said come alone. The note is a lie designed to isolate you. Victor has no intention of returning Mira, regardless of what you do. This is about leverage, forcing me to choose between protecting you and maintaining blood court law. Lord Ashenfell released her wrist, his expression hardening into something ancient and merciless. He's forgotten that I'm older than the laws he's hiding behind. And there are rules that predate the Great Compact. Mrs. Thorne appeared in the doorway, breathless. My lord, I've sent word to your allies. Lord Cassius of House Nightborn and Lady Sierra of House Thornheart are en route. Good. Tell them to secure the perimeter but not engage. This ends between Victor and me. He turned back to Elena. Can you shoot? Yes. My father taught me. He handed her a small pistol, compact and deadly. Silver bullets blessed with holy water. Won't kill a vampire outright, but it will slow them down, cause enough pain to create openings. His voice gentled slightly. Aim for center mass. Don't hesitate. And stay close to me. They moved through the manor with purpose, Lord Ashenfell leading the way through passages Elena hadn't known existed. They emerged in a stable where horses waited, already saddled by Mrs. Thorne's efficient preparation. The old quarter is 20 minutes by horse, Lord Ashenfell said, as they mounted. We'll approach from the east. Use the ruins for cover. Victor will have watchers, but the area is vast enough to give us advantages if we're clever. Elena had ridden before, but not like this, racing through darkness with a vampire whose supernatural senses guided them around obstacles invisible to human eyes. The wind tore at her hair, and terror for Mira formed a knot in her chest so tight she could barely breathe. The old quarter ruins rose from the earth like broken teeth, remnants of a city that had burned centuries ago. Lord Ashenfell slowed as they approached, his body tense with Hunter's awareness. 4 watchers on the perimeter, he whispered, his voice barely audible. 2 more on the cathedral's remains. Victor himself is deeper in, probably the old council chamber. How do you know? I can smell his blood, ancient, powerful, distinct. He's not hiding. He wants us to find him. Lord Ashenfell dismounted, moving with predatory grace. Follow my lead. When I engage the watchers, you run for the cathedral. I'll be right behind you. What if, no what ifs. Trust me. His eyes met hers, and Elena saw absolute certainty there. I won't let him hurt your daughter. I swear it on my blood, my name, my house. A blood oath given freely. The weight of it settled over Elena like armor. Lord Ashenfell moved then, becoming shadow and violence. The first watcher died before Elena registered movement, Lord Ashenfell's blade opening the vampire's throat with surgical precision. The second tried to shout warning, but managed only a gurgle as silver pierced her heart. Run. Lord Ashenfell commanded, and Elena ran. She sprinted through ruins that seemed to clutch at her with broken stone fingers, her breath ragged in her throat. Behind her, she heard combat metal on metal. Inhuman screams, the wet sounds of violence too brutal to contemplate. The cathedral loomed ahead, its spire somehow still standing despite walls that had crumbled to suggestion. Elena burst through the entrance and stopped, her heart seizing. Mira hung suspended in the center of the chamber, wrapped in chains that glowed faintly with runes. Her daughter was unconscious, but breathing, her small chest rising and falling with merciful regularity. Around her, 5 vampires stood guard, their eyes reflecting red in the moonlight streaming through the broken roof, and seated on what remained of the altar. Victor Valentius smiled. Right on time, he said pleasantly. Though I see you ignored my instruction about coming alone. Ashenfell always did have trouble following simple directions. Elena raised the pistol with shaking hands, aiming at Victor's chest. Let her go. I don't think so. You see, this child is the leverage I need to ensure your cooperation. Victor stood, moving with liquid grace. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign documents renouncing all claim to House Corvus. You're going to testify before the blood courts that your marks are forgeries, your heritage a delusion. And then you're going to disappear somewhere far from vampire politics, where you can raise your daughter in the blessed ignorance humans prefer. And if I refuse, then I kill her, slowly, while you watch. Victor's smile never wavered. Don't test me, Elena. I've committed genocide for less than what's at stake here. You'll never get away with this. Lord Ashenfell is currently dealing with a dozen of my best fighters. Oh, he'll survive, he always does, but by the time he reaches us, you'll have already made your choice. Victor produced a document, ink and quill already prepared. Sign. Save your daughter. It's remarkably simple. Elena's mind raced. She could sign, save Mira, and spend the rest of her life knowing she'd erased her family's memory to satisfy a murder's politics. Or she could refuse and watch her daughter die. Neither option was survivable. Then she heard it, a sound like thunder, growing closer. The cathedral's remaining walls shook, dust raining from above. Victor's expression shifted from confident to wary. Lord Ashenfell exploded through the eastern wall in a shower of stone and fury. He was covered in black ichor, his eyes blazing with inhuman light, moving with violence so precise it seemed choreographed. 3 of Victor's guards fell before they could react, their bodies crumbling to ash. You broke parley, Lord Ashenfell snarled, his voice barely recognizable. You violated sanctuary. You forfeited every protection blood court law provides. Victor moved then, faster than Elena could track, meeting Lord Ashenfell's charge with his own supernatural speed. They collided with force that cracked the stone floor, two ancient vampires fighting with the accumulated skill of centuries. Elena ran for Mira, but the remaining guards intercepted her. She fired the pistol once, twice, and one vampire screamed as silver burned through flesh. But the other was on her, claws reaching for her throat. She ducked, using momentum to slide beneath the vampire's guard, and drove her dagger up into its ribs. The creature howled, stumbling back, and Elena pressed her advantage, fighting with desperate ferocity she didn't know she possessed. Above her, Mira stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Mama? I'm here, baby. Hold on." The chains were locked with mechanisms Elena couldn't break. She yanked uselessly at them, terror making her clumsy, until she noticed the runes pulsing in rhythm with Mira's heartbeat. Blood magic. The chains responded to Corvus' blood. Elena didn't think. She grabbed her dagger and drew it across her palm, pressing bleeding flesh against the chains. The runes flared brilliant crimson, then shattered. Mira fell into her arms, and Elena held her daughter close, feeling her warmth, her life, her safety. Across the chamber, Lord Ashenfell and Victor circled each other, both wounded, both deadly. Victor's earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by calculation and growing fear. "This isn't over," Victor hissed. "The blood courts will condemn you for this breaking parley. Killing under truce, let them try." Lord Ashenfell's voice was death itself. "I am the first. I predate your courts, your laws, your entire house, and I claim blood vengeance for crimes against those under my protection." He moved then, final and absolute. Victor tried to dodge, but wasn't fast enough. Lord Ashenfell's blade found his heart, and the ancient vampire's eyes went wide with shock and disbelief. "Impossible," Victor whispered. "I'm Valentius." "You were Valentius," Lord Ashenfell corrected. "Now you're just ash." Victor's form collapsed, dissolving into gray dust that scattered in the wind. Howling through the broken cathedral, silence fell, broken only by Mira's soft crying and Elena's ragged breathing. Lord Ashenfell stood amid the carnage, covered in blood and ash, looking every inch the monster Elena had feared. But when his eyes met hers, she saw only concern, ancient and weary and achingly human. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Elena shook her head, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. She held Mira tighter, feeling her daughter's heartbeat against her own, and knew with absolute certainty that she would never be the same person who'd walked through rain-soaked alleys 4 nights ago. She'd become something else, something stronger, something worthy of the name Corvus. Chapter 10. Dawn of House Corvus. Autumn Council convened in a cathedral that had stood for 800 years, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadows no candle could penetrate. Every major house had sent representatives, pale figures in formal dress, their eyes reflecting centuries of accumulated power and suspicion. Elena stood in the center of the assembly floor, Mira at her side, wearing a gown of midnight blue that Mrs. Thorne had commissioned. The Corvus pendant gleamed at her throat, catching light like a promise. Around her wrist, she'd wrapped a silver cuff bearing Lord Ashenfell's mark, not ownership, but alliance freely given. The whispers had started the moment she'd entered. The last Corvus heir, the woman who'd broken Lord Victor, the human who'd made the first of House Ashenfell kill to protect her. Lord Ashenfell stood to her right, not beside her, but close enough to signal protection without implying control. He wore formal black, his expression carved from stone, but Elena had learned to read the subtle tensions in his posture. He was worried, not for himself, but for her. The Blood Court's 7 judges sat on an elevated dais, ancient vampires representing the founding houses. Lord Cassius of House Nightborn, Lady Sira of House Thornheart, and 5 others whose names Elena had memorized during her frantic preparation. Lady Sira spoke first, her voice carrying through the cathedral with preternatural clarity. "We are assembled to address the claim of Elena Corvus and her daughter Mira Corvus as legitimate heirs to the destroyed House Corvus." Her dark eyes settled on Elena. "Step forward and present your evidence." Elena moved into the circle of light at the chamber's center, her heart hammering, but her voice steady. "I am Elena Corvus, granddaughter of Alara Corvus, who served as bloodbound counselor to Lady Morgana Corvus. I bear the house mark, as does my daughter. I carry my grandmother's journal, which documents House Corvus's innocence of the charges that led to their destruction." She produced the leather-bound journal, and a court-attendant human, Elena noted with some relief, carried it to the judges. They passed it between them, reading with expressions that revealed nothing. Marks can be forged, said Lord Cassius, though his tone suggested he was playing devil's advocate rather than expressing genuine doubt. Journals can be fabricated. What proof do you offer that cannot be counterfeited? I offer myself to blood-right trial, Elena said, the words she'd rehearsed with Lord Ashenfell coming smoothly despite her terror. Let the old magic read my lineage. Let it prove or disprove my claim absolutely. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Blood-right trial was painful, invasive, and absolutely conclusive. By volunteering for it, Elena was demonstrating either supreme confidence or desperate gamble. Lady Syrah's expression softened almost imperceptibly. The trial requires a conductor of vampire old enough and powerful enough to channel the testing magic without being consumed by it. Lord Ashenfell, as first of your house and eldest present, the duty falls to you. Do you accept? Lord Ashenfell stepped forward. I accept. He moved to stand before Elena, and she saw conflict in his ancient eyes. The trial would hurt her, he'd warned her of that. It would strip away every secret, expose every truth about her bloodline. But it was the only way to prove beyond doubt that she belonged here. Are you certain? He asked quietly, too low for others to hear. Yes, Elena whispered back. He drew a silver blade from his belt, ceremonial, etched with runes that seemed to writhe in the candlelight. Give me your hand. Elena extended her left hand, palm up. Lord Ashenfell's cool fingers wrapped around her wrist, steadying her. The blade cut quick and clean, opening her palm. Blood welled up, dark and rich. Lord Ashenfell began to speak in the old language, words that resonated with power that made Elena's bones ache. He pressed his own palm against hers, his blood darker, colder mixing with hers. The pain started as a burning sensation, then exploded into white-hot agony that drove Elena to her knees. She felt the magic crawling through her veins, reading her history written in blood and bone. It traced back through her mother, her grandmother, generations of Corvus blood stretching into the past. But it didn't stop there. The magic went deeper, found something Elena hadn't known existed, a connection that blazed through her like lightning. Lady Morgana's blood. Direct line. Not through servants or blood bonds, but actual descent. Elena's grandmother hadn't just served House Corvus. She'd been House Corvus Morgana's daughter, hidden as a servant to protect her from the same enemies who eventually burned the house to ash. The revelation shattered through the cathedral. Elena felt it the moment the judges saw the truth, heard their collective intake of breath. She was more than heir. She was the direct bloodline, the last living descendant of House Corvus's ruling family. Lord Ashenfell's grip on her hand tightened, grounding her as the magic released its hold. Elena collapsed forward, and he caught her, his strength the only thing keeping her upright. Pure Corvus blood, Lady Syrah announced, her voice carrying shock and something that might have been hope. Direct descent from Lady Morgana herself. The claim is legitimate. House Corvus is reborn. The cathedral erupted in voices, some celebrating, some protesting, most simply stunned. Elena barely heard them. Her head spun, pain and revelation warring for dominance. Breathe, Lord Ashenfell murmured against her ear. You did it. It's over. But it wasn't over. Elena knew that with bone-deep certainty. This was just the beginning. Lady Syrah called for order, her voice cutting through the chaos. The blood courts recognize Elena Corvus and Mira Corvus as legitimate heirs of House Corvus, with all rights and territories appertaining thereto. She paused, her gaze sweeping the assembly. We further recognize that House Corvus's destruction violated blood court law. An investigation will be opened. Those responsible will face consequences. More murmurs, these edged with fear. Victor was dead, but he hadn't acted alone. Other houses had participated in the massacre, claimed territories that should have gone to Corvus survivors. Lord Cassius stood. There remains the question of House Corvus's leadership. Lady Elena, you are mortal. Your daughter is a child. Vampire law requires that all ruling houses be led by vampires, who can enforce blood court decisions and defend their territories. Here it was. The choice Lord Ashenfell had warned her about. There is precedent. Lady Syrah interjected smoothly, for a mortal heir to accept the turning, to become vampire, and thus qualified to rule. Lady Elena, do you wish to accept this transformation? Every eye in the cathedral fixed on Elena. She felt the weight of their attention, their expectations, their calculations about what her choice would mean for the delicate balance of power. She thought of what she'd learned over these harrowing nights. The loneliness of immortality. The hunger that never fully faded. The weight of watching everyone you loved age and die while you remained unchanged. She thought of Mira, who would grow up, grow old, grow beyond Elena's reach if Elena chose to become vampire. But she also thought of House Corvus's dream partnership between species, systems that protected both human and vampire. She thought of her grandmother's journal, the evidence that could force the blood courts to reckon with centuries of injustice. She thought of Lord Ashenfell, ancient and lonely, and trying so hard to be better than his nature demanded. Elena straightened, stepping away from Lord Ashenfell's support to stand on her own. "I don't accept the turning," she said clearly. Shock rippled through the assembly. Lord Ashenfell's expression went carefully blank. However, Elena continued, her voice growing stronger. "I propose an alternative. House Corvus was founded on partnership between vampire and human. I will rule as a mortal, with full authority over House Corvus's political decisions and territory management. And I will take a vampire as my partner not through blood oath or marriage, but through mutual alliance based on shared values." She turned to face Lord Ashenfell fully. "Lord Ashenfell has proven his commitment to House Corvus's restoration. He's protected my daughter and me at great personal cost. And he's demonstrated that vampires can choose partnership over domination." She met his eyes. "If he's willing, I propose a formal alliance between House Ashenfell and House Corvus. Two houses equal partners, working together to show the vampire world that the old ways aren't the only ways." The silence was absolute. What Elena proposed was unprecedented, a mortal leading a vampire house, governing through alliance rather than transformation or subjugation. Lord Ashenfell looked at her with an expression she couldn't fully read: surprise, certainly, but also something warmer, something that looked almost like hope. "You would remain human?" he asked quietly. "Knowing that means you'll age, die, leave House Corvus to Mira's eventual leadership?" "Yes, because House Corvus's strength was never about immortality. It was about proving that humans and vampires could build something together that neither could build alone." Elena's voice softened. "And because my daughter deserves a mother who ages with her, who understands human life, who can teach her to navigate both worlds." Lord Ashenfell was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he knelt before her, an ancient vampire king kneeling before a mortal woman, acknowledging her authority, her wisdom, her choice. "House Ashenfell accepts your alliance," he said formally. "Equal partners, bound by honor, not blood, working together toward a future where both our peoples can thrive." Lady Sierra stood, and Elena saw tears in the ancient vampire's eyes. The blood courts recognized this unprecedented alliance. House Corvus is restored under Lady Elena's mortal leadership, partnered with House Ashenfell. Her voice grew firm. "Let it be known throughout all vampire territories, House Corvus has returned. And with it, the dream of partnership over predation." The cathedral erupted in voices of celebration and protest in equal measure. But Elena barely heard them. She was looking at Lord Ashenfell, at Mira, who'd run forward to clutch her hand, at the future opening before her like dawn breaking over ancient stones. It would be hard. There would be houses that opposed her, vampires who saw her mortality as weakness, challenges to her authority at every turn. But she'd survived worse. She'd survived betrayal and scandal and single motherhood. She'd survived vampire politics and ancient monsters and the revelation of heritage. She'd never imagined she could survive this too. And maybe, just maybe, she could build something worthy of the family who died believing in partnership over power. Lord Ashenfell rose, offering his hand. Elena took it, feeling the coolness of his skin, the strength in his grip, the unspoken promise in his touch. Together, they turned to face the blood courts, a mortal woman and an ancient vampire. Alliance bound by choice rather than compulsion. House Corvus had fallen in fire and blood, but it had risen in hope and partnership. And that, Elena thought, as Mira's hand squeezed hers tight, made all the difference. The end.